welcome back to the Integrative Health Podcast with Dr. Jen. Really excited today to be interviewing Dr. Terry Wahls. She's an Institute for Functional Medicine certified practitioner and conducts clinical research at the University of Iowa using functional medicine principles in the setting of multiple sclerosis. She's published over 100 peer-reviewed scientific publications, abstracts, and posters. In 2018, she was awarded the Institute for Functional Medicine's Linus Pauling Award for her contributions in research, clinical care, and patient advocacy. Dr. Wahls has secondary progressive multiple sclerosis, which confines her to a tilt-recline wheelchair for 4 years. Dr. Wahls restored her health by using diet and lifestyle programs she designed specifically for her brain and now pedals her bike to work each day. She is the author of the Wahls Protocol, How I Beat Progressive MS Using Paleo Principles in Functional Medicine, the Wahls Protocol, a radical new way to treat all chronic autoimmune conditions using paleo principles, and the cookbook, the Wahls Protocol, Cooking for Life, the revolutionary modern paleo plan to treat all chronic autoimmune diseases. And we will link everything about her clinical trials, and it's at terrywahls.com/trials. She also has the Wahls diet handout, and I will also link that for you all. So welcome, Dr. Terry Wahls. She's an MD. She's amazing. I've met her, and her story is so touching. So I'm so excited to have you here.
Hey, thank you for having me. Love your work.
Thank you so much. Now, when I first heard your story, I was amazed, and I had Hashimoto's. So I was in the same boat. You know, we're all in conventional medicine in our training, and then we get a disease that doesn't get better with conventional medicine. So then what happens? So tell us a little bit about your story.
Yeah, so I'm a board certified internal medicine physician, and I was here at the University of Iowa and at the Iowa City VA Medical Center, and I'm diagnosed with relapsing remitting multiple sclerosis. My left leg had grown weak when I was out walking with my wife Jackie, and I hobbled home, saw the neurologist, and as I was going through the workup, which took about 3 weeks, I'm thinking about the fact that I've already had 20 years of worsening electrical face pain due to trigeminal neuralgia. And for your listeners, imagine a bolt of electricity hitting you at the temple, shooting down your face. And over 20 years, the intensity of the pain had been getting worse. The frequency was worse. The difficulty getting it turned off was worse. So actually, I was hoping for a fatal diagnosis because I knew I had a progressive neurologic problem, and I didn't want to become disabled. So when I heard multiple sclerosis, my physicians were very reassuring. I sought out the best MS center in the country, saw their best physician, took the newest drugs. 3 years later, I'm in a tilt-recline wheelchair. And that's when I decided to go back to reading the basic science, the animal models for multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, Huntington's disease. I decided that mitochondrial dysfunction is driving disability. I create a supplement cocktail for my mitochondria. The speed of my decline slows. I'm very grateful, but I am still declining. Within 4 years, I'm unable to sit up. I'm in a tilt-recline wheelchair. I have a zero-gravity chair with my knees higher than my nose. Fortunately, I'm still mentally clear. The university and the VA have redesigned my job, so now I'm reviewing research studies. I tell them, please give me everything related to the brain. So I'm getting better at reading the research. I'm getting more ideas.
You are still working.
I'm still working. And fortunately, the VA and the university kept redesigning what I was doing so I could keep working. I was staffing the resident clinic. I was going to the institutional review board, reviewing clinical trials for safety. And I was still the medical director for the 5-state area for specialty medicine in primary care for the VA. So I was still working. My boss at the VA pulled me into his office to say, Terry, I'm reassigning you, so the term was detailing, to the traumatic brain injury clinic. You'll start in January. so sort of finish up the projects you're doing. You start in January. And he describes the job. There'll be no residents. I'm part of a multidisciplinary team, and I'll be examining these veterans and then, taking care of them. I come home, tell Jackie, and she goes, there's no way you can do that job. You physically can't do it, honey. And of course, that's true. I knew I probably couldn't do that, and that I'd probably now have to apply for medical disability. And I said, honey, in January I'll go, and either I can do this or I can't, and then I have to apply for disability. So I'm really quite bummed. And then, about 2 weeks later, maybe 3, one of the studies that I have to review is using electrical stimulation of muscles in people who are paralyzed, never going to walk. So newly paralyzed folks, they'll start doing this electrical stimulation. And I think, wow, I wonder if I could do that. So I call my physical therapist and I tell him I want to try electrical stimulation of muscles. He said, well, yes, he does that for his athletes. Because the person I was seeing had a large athletic practice. He said, Terry, it's really quite painful. You have a lot of pain. We'll give it a try, but you need to know, I can grow bigger muscles. I just don't know that your brain can talk to the bigger muscles. I could be adding more weight to your legs and make it harder for you to take the few steps that you can take. So there's some risk in doing this. But I really want to try. He gives me a test session. It does hurt really bad, but when it's over, I feel great. I mean, I just feel this sort of euphoria. And he says, that's probably the endorphins. So I go every day for the next 2 weeks, and he finds a homegoing device, and I start doing electrical stimulation at home. And, my exercises that I can do only about 10 minutes. If I do more than that, I just can't function and go to work. So I do my little 10-minute exercise. I add the electrical stimulation. And then about that same time, I see this course, a functional medicine approach to treating neurologic disease. So I get that course. It's from the Institute for Functional Medicine. Catherine Wollner is part of that. Jay is part of that. And audio synchronized PowerPoints. It's a lot of work. I go through it. I have a longer list of supplements in addition to the ones that I already had from mitochondria. I take those. Not a lot's happening. I'm feeling emotionally better with my electrical stim. I'm certainly not stronger yet. And then I have this new aha, and I laugh at myself how long it took to have this aha. Like, what if I redesigned the Paleolithic diet that I've been following already for 5 years based on this long list of supplements? So I have to figure out where those things are in the food supply. And actually, it's the Linus Pauling Institute for Nutrition. I go through that. I redesign my paleo diet based on all of this. It's very structured. And I start this new diet December 26, 2007. Now, for your audience, at that point, I cannot sit up. I could take just a couple steps using 2 walking sticks. I'm beginning to have brain fog. My trigeminal neuralgia is certainly much worse. It is very clear to me I'm on track to become bedridden by my illness, demented by my illness, and probably die with intractable, horrible levels of pain. And January comes, I go to this new clinic, I watch my partners for 2 weeks, and then the 3rd week of January, I have to start seeing the patients. And so Monday comes, I see my patients, I write the notes, I come home and I tell Jack, that wasn't too bad. And honey, could I try sitting in a regular chair for supper? Which I haven't done in years. So I sit up for supper. That's a big deal.
Amazing.
And a couple more weeks passed and I'm back with my physical therapist. Terry, you're definitely getting stronger. Let's have you exercise 10 minutes twice a day. Then we go to 15 minutes twice a day, then 20 minutes twice a day, then 30 minutes twice a day. And then I start walking in the hospital with my 2 walking sticks.
Wow.
And then with one, and then with none. And then, and I think it was April, I'm walking around the block, not far, just, a little bit with Jack, and say, honey, can I try riding my bike? Because it's been 6 years. It goes, well, maybe in the fall things keep going well. Well, 2 weeks later, it's Mother's Day, and I really want to try riding my bike. So we have this emergency family meeting. Both my kids do not want me to ride the bike because they don't want me to fall and get hurt. But Jack says, let's give it a try. She tells my 16-year-old son, Zach, you run alongside on the left. My 13-year-old daughter, Zeb, you run alongside on the right, and she'll follow. We all get into position.
Whenever you tell this story, you get emotional, and it's so beautiful.
And I bike around the block. My kids are crying, Jackie's crying. As you could tell, I'm still very emotional. When I relive that moment, you see, that's when it was the first time I understood how much recovery might be possible.
Yeah.
And I bike a little further every day. In October, Jackie comes home and says, honey, I've signed us up for the Courage Ride. It's 18.5 miles. However far you go, well, it'll be wonderful. And I finished that ride, 18.5 miles. Once again, you're all crying. My kids are crying. Jackie's crying. I'm crying. I still cry, reliving that moment. And it changes how I think about disease and health. It will change the way I practice medicine. It will change the focus of my research. And I've made it my mission now. I have several missions. One is to do the research to change the standard of care and publish that, and to teach the public that there's so much that they can do to change the course of their lives, and to teach clinicians. And just last week, I had a mother send me this amazing video. Her little baby has leukodystrophy, Mitchell syndrome. So his brain is demyelinating. He can no longer sit up. He can't crawl. His physicians say nothing we can do about it. Little baby's got a feeding tube. Someone sends them a copy of my book and with a note saying, read this, it will change your life. Read it and implement it. So they read my book and they, read the nutrients that I say the brain needs, and they add them to the baby's formula. And the baby begins holding his head up, begins crawling, and they repeat the brain MRI, and the brain is remyelinating. And the doctor's like, oh my God, what are you doing?
Right.
And so she made this this video on TikTok, 5 million views. On Instagram, 1 million views. Shared it with me, tagged me. And this happens every month. I get families reaching out to me, parents or adults saying, I discovered your work. My physicians had said, there's nothing more I can do.
Right.
They discover my work and they begin implementing the concepts, and their lives are transformed. Now, forgive me, I have to bite my nose because I always get emotional telling my story.
Oh, no, I think it's beautiful. And I think how extreme this is, that you were in a wheelchair and you're a conventional medicine doctor. You're an MD.
Oh, I believe that. I treated my disease incredibly aggressively.
Yeah, and our body can heal, but it's not always the drugs, right? It can heal food and nutrients.
What I talk about, I think we can visualize that if a windstorm comes through think of everybody who just had Hurricane Helene, Hurricane Milton come through, wreck their homes. They know it's going to take a whole lot of resource to haul away the debris, then hire contractors to come in with new materials and rebuild their home. For you with Hashimoto's, for me with multiple sclerosis, there was a lot of incorrectly laid molecules, a lot of trash in my brain, my cranial nerves, my spinal cord that has to be hauled away and then rebuilt. And if you don't have the correct nutrition, you can't haul away the trash and you can't rebuild correctly made structures. So yes, you can take drugs to stop your body from attacking, but you still can't repair if you don't address the nutrition.
Yeah, that's a great point. And this is talking about treating a disease versus reversing disease. And that's a big difference between conventional principles versus functional and versus your research in your book.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, you brought up something that I think it's a really important point, standard of care. You want to change the standard of care. Now, I don't know, you guys need to, listening out there, realize that that is such a big mission. And I love that you said that. And I didn't know, Dr. Wahls, that was your mission, to change the standard of care. So could you explain a little bit, first of all, why this is such a big deal?
It's well, and it's hard for
Right.
all of us. Our understanding of the world is built over the lifetime of experience. And it will take a lot of evidence for you to change your understanding of the world, whether it is about, for example, your spouse. You will never believe that your spouse was really a secret agent for a foreign government. You couldn't possibly believe that. Or that they have a drug addiction problem. It would take a lot of evidence for you to finally admit that there was this other part of their life you didn't know. For the physicians, we have been trained in a very conventional understanding of how to treat the disease. It will take an overwhelming amount of evidence. It's about 30 years. I'm 15 years into this journey. My ideas, when I first started talking about food as a critical part of treating MS, was crazy. I was banned, I was condemned. There's all sorts of terrible things written about me on in the internet. People said I did not have MS. All of my physicians were completely incompetent, because clearly you could not reverse that kind of disability. And so, my response to them when I would be on these podcasts would say, like, okay, so let's discount my case. Then let's look at my peer-reviewed published research, where I've had a neurologist verify the diagnoses for multiple sclerosis. Then we treat them with our interventions. And this is with other folks with progressive MS. We reverse the fatigue, reverse the anxiety, the depression, the cognitive decline. And half of them in a year's time had clinically significant improvement in walking. With progressive MS, that is astounding. And then now we've done multiple clinical trials with relapse remitting MS using either the low saturated fat diet, modified Paleolithic diet, ketogenic diets. And again, we can show that people can radically change their eating pattern with support and help. And when they do, fatigue is diminished, energy is improved, quality of life is improved, anxiety and depression are declined. And we've also now added a measure called the MS Functional Composite, which combines the 25-foot walk test, how fast you can walk 25 feet, the 9-hole pegboard, how fast you can take pegs out of a pegboard and manipulate them, put them back, and the symbol digit modalities, a test of working memory, very much like RAM in your computer. And by combining all of that, you get a really concrete measure of function. We're able to show again, in multiple studies, that changing the diet led to reduced functional or measured disability in a 12-week period. Astounding, astounding. And now we're doing one of the largest clinical trials over 2 years that includes MRIs in people with relapsing, remitting multiple sclerosis, comparing a ketogenic diet, a modified paleo diet to the usual diet. We've got 162 people in. In just a couple of weeks, we will have gotten everyone through the 3-month schedule. And then by the end of January, everyone will be through their 6 months of the schedule. And then by summer of 2026, we'll have everyone through the study, and we'll start cleaning the data, analyzing it. And then in January, or probably in 2027, we'll be presenting our findings at some of the major international MS meetings.
That is huge. That's amazing. I'm curious, how are the keto people doing?
Well, we don't really know because
Not
we don't
yet.
get to
Okay.
analyze the data until.
But this is the first time you've looked at paleo versus keto versus regular?
No. Actually, it's not the first time. It's the second time we did a small pilot study, keto versus paleo. And that study, paleo did better than keto, but it's a very small, very small study. And from a biochemical physiology standpoint, one could predict that keto would do better than paleo because when you're in ketosis, those fat bodies bypass some of the theoretic problems in the brain metabolism. The challenge in the study will be keto is a harder diet to follow and sustain long term. Paleo is socially easier. Keto is harder. However, we also note that if you have whatever your diet intervention, whether it's low fat, keto, Mediterranean, paleo, if people experience a symptom reduction on the diet, it's easier to sustain or easier to adopt. And then over time, every dietary intervention, people will begin to slip up. They'll have a dietary indiscretion.
Yes.
And now the question is there a flare of symptoms with that diet discretion? If there isn't, people tend to migrate back towards their previous usual diet. However, if when they go off, they have their dietary indiscretion, their symptoms flare and they feel much worse, that diet will be sustained. And what we've seen in our paleo diet studies is, that's what people tell us is, yeah, I had a cheat meal and man, I felt so bad afterwards. I don't do that anymore. It's like with me, if I came to your house and you accidentally gave me gluten, dairy, or eggs, in about 6 to 10 hours, I would experience a flare of my trigeminal neuralgia. And it's so painful. It is so painful. It's very easy for me to like, you know what? I would rather just have tea. If there's a meal I'm not sure about, I've learned to just have tea. When I travel, so I'll be going to a scientific meeting in December to talk, and I'll bring a bunch of food with me because the penalty for a dietary indiscretion is so great.
Yeah. And that's what I tell people. If you are not comfortable with the meal or you think it might make you feel like crap the next day, just fast. Or I'll just eat butter. Like I was out at a meeting and listening to someone speak and I was like, I just don't know about this, or I don't think this will make me feel good. So I just had some butter. So, but I know what you mean by like slipping up. And this is one thing that everyone listening needs to understand. You need to actually follow these dietary changes or an elimination diet for 6 to 8 weeks. Because you're not gonna, if you just do it for a couple weeks, you're not gonna feel the benefits. So then
Yeah.
when you reintroduce, you're just gonna feel the same because you never took it out completely. But
Yeah.
that's wild. You actually have a trigeminal neuralgia flare.
But I try to teach our study participants
Mm-hmm.
and my clinic patients and the folks who follow me is I want you to understand your biosensors. And so what is the symptom that is most troublesome for you? And if it's pain, that is very helpful. If it's optic neuritis, so you can't see, that's pretty helpful. If it's changes in anxiety, depression, mental clarity, that's a little harder because that's a more subtle. So motor problems and pain are the most useful. Yeah, and then if you have a flare of your symptom, think back to the previous 24 to 72 hours, what was different, either in your diet, in your stress level, your toxic exposures. People have these wildfires that with more air pollution, particulate stuff, that'll lead to flare. If you had the coronavirus infection, that can lead to a flare. If you've had a diet exposure, that can lead to a flare. And so we try to teach people how to tune into their subtle symptoms, their biosensor. If you had a flare of symptoms, think back 24 to 72 hours, what was the new exposure? And say like, okay, that's the problem. If it was a diet, I can take it out. If it's a fight with my spouse, I got to deal with it. If it's a work problem, I have to deal with it. If it is a air toxin, maybe I need to get a better filtration system in my home. And if you can pay attention over time, you can narrow in which dietary elements are most important for you.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And that's really helpful. And it's sometimes hard when you have a lot going on to narrow it down unless you're following a plan. So this is why it's so important to have a diet plan. If you're
It will make it much
struggling with
easier.
a chronic, yeah, if you're struggling with a chronic illness. And, I see it with my Hashimoto's patients. They'll like be like, well, I'm 95% gluten-free. And I'm like, that doesn't
That's not
work.
gluten-free.
It doesn't work. I know. So then I have to talk with them again about it. Be like, look, I need you to go 100% for 6 weeks and then go eat a giant pizza and see if you feel different. And they'll do that. And they're like, oh yeah, they're either, celiac or gluten, non-celiac
Sensitive, yeah.
sensitivity. Yeah.
And what I try to point out is, if all you can really do is a Mediterranean diet at home with your family, yep, that is a huge improvement over the standard American diet.
Right.
And for some folks, that's what they have to do. And sometimes that's enough. And sometimes we do the Mediterranean diet for as long as they want to do it. And then I'll point out when you're ready to take the next step and take gluten out 100%, read all the labels. And then I want you to also take out dairy because of the cross reactivity. And we can have a negotiation over how long your test period will be.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're gonna do this, do it 100%. So your experiment is good, because if you're in my lab, you did an experiment at 95%, that's enough. Yeah, you have if you're gonna do the experiment, you want to do the experiment correctly.
Yeah,
And
no one wants their car working 95% of the time, right?
You don't want your brakes working 95% of the time. Do you want to send your children out driving a car with brakes that work 95% of the time? Do you want to send your spouse out with a car on the freeway with a brake that works 95%? I mean, I wouldn't.
And this is how important our diet is. And, people want to make every excuse in the book, and you didn't make excuses. You went for it. You reversed your disease. People are talking trash about you as this doctor that is faking. Like, it's just insane to me that we're so worried that we have cures to chronic illnesses, but you have to put the work in.
It is really hard. I'm empathetic for my colleagues. It is so hard to change your understanding of the world. It's far easier to talk trash about me. It's far easier to say I'm a liar. It's far easier to say all these terrible things. It's far easier to try and discount me because I write books, because I sell programs to teach people, because I sell courses. Even though I do research,
Right.
published, hundreds of over 100 papers, posters, abstracts, scientific presentations. But what is gratifying, things are changing. When I go to scientific meetings and I send my postdocs to scientific meetings, people are stopping, talking to us. People are pulling out their phones saying, and Dr. Wahls, could I get a picture of you with me? My research team would like this. My patients would like this. And could I post it on my Instagram? Like, oh yeah, it's fine. And at the last meeting that I attended, the Consortium of MS Centers, this is the largest international meeting of clinicians and scientists together. The very last lecture, Saturday morning, and that session was about diet's impact on immune function. And this woman was from Canada was talking about the research, and they were looking at Reddit and the comments on how people are infecting themselves with parasites to manage their inflammatory bowel disease, rheumatoid arthritis, and MS. Super interesting. And then she goes, and then we started looking at people, the public's ahead of us. They're using diet, and they're going to people who are talking about diet. So the next slide are the 4 leading books for people with MS about diet. And of course, the Wahls Protocol was one of them. And so I went up and chatted with her afterwards. And we exchanged contact information, talking about future collaborations.
That's awesome.
It is happening. And some of the scientific colleagues and I, we went out for dinner, and my book, my TED Talk, which by the way had 4 million views now, changed the conversation of donors, because the donors want to see this investigated, want to see this addressed. And the public, more and more patients with MS are wanting to talk about diet, wanting to change diet, and are talking to their clinicians. So it is happening. I'm not so crazy anymore. I'm being celebrated. I was nominated for the John Distel Award for my contributions. And this is a huge award in the MS research world for my impact on the field of research, because I have driven the conversation. I have driven the public interest. So we'll see. I didn't get that award. They traditionally, that award has always gone to a basic scientist who is developing drugs. I'm the first person who actually takes care of patients, who actually is creating a movement. So we'll see. Someday it will happen. I don't know that it'll be me, but there'll be some scientist that is studying nutrition and MS that will get that award.
Well, it's amazing all the research that you have done and that you're still doing. And this is no easy feat. This is really, really difficult to do these big research, studies. And it's just amazing. It's beautiful how you're changing lives in the MS world.
The other thing that is remarkable is the funding for my research is philanthropic. The funding for my small pilot studies were all philanthropic, based gifts from people whose lives have been transformed by my work. Basically called up, it was wild. They got called up the university, cold call to give, 6-figure to my research lab. The dean of the College of Medicine scheduled an appointment with me or scheduled me to come in, and I thought, oh my God, what have I done now? And the whole conversation was, the university has never had anyone get funding at the level that you're getting with cold calls. So tell me about your research, what you're doing, what's your mission. So really fascinating conversation. And I must say that my staying at the university changed. I went from being sort of fringe, sort of crazy, people to really, sort of laughed at, to now people are really excited, really proud of my work, proud that I'm here. When the chair of medicine talks about in their annual review, I am mentioned as part of the annual review because one, I've published a lot. I have postdocs. We're doing really interesting work. We have interesting collaborations. And I think the fact that the donors have been so consistent in funding my studies, and that we've had millions of dollars directed to my lab, so I could do these big, interesting studies, which allowed me to go from fringe to innovative to pioneering to like, oh my God, we're so proud of you, keep it up. And I think that's happening in the MS world. I've gone from fringe to crazy to innovative to pioneering. We'll see just how far this goes. Will I be like Barry Marshall and get to the Nobel Prize in medicine? I don't know, but
I would love to see it.
That could be pretty cool. I think there will be a time when nutrition scientists will get there.
Yeah, I sure hope so. Well, what's on the horizon for you now? You were sharing with me that you are a grandmother now.
Oh yeah, so I am a grandmother. That is super exciting. My grandson is almost 7 months old, and so I would get to have him overnight sometimes. My son and his wife went away for a weekend, so we had him for a long weekend. Super fun. And my research team and I are evaluating what to do with our next clinical trial. So we're having some discussions, looking at a couple of study design ideas. So planning the next big study.
That's really exciting. And you have 3 books, correct?
We have 3 books. So we have Minding My Mitochondria, my very first book that I self-published, that people said, you self-publish a book, you'll never get a book deal. Well, that was wrong. I did get a book deal. Because actually, I sold, I think, 30,000 copies of Minding My Mitochondria, and I'm still selling copies of that. Then we have the Wahls Protocol, my first book that came out in 2014, that really drove, and of course, my TED Talk changed the whole conversation about diet and lifestyle. Then that was followed with a paperback. And then in 2017, the cookbook, Wahls Protocol, Cooking for Life. Then in 2020, we revised the paperback with about a third new information. Of course, that came out the week that we all shut down for the pandemic, so that was terribly inconvenient. But we have a new book deal. There will be a new book coming out in June of 2026 that we're just getting started writing on. And that book's going to be a conversation about sort of nutrition impacts and the multiple disease states. So we go from the spectrum of the pre-symptomatic folks, the folks who have symptoms but no clear diagnosis, the folks who have diagnoses but without symptoms like metabolic syndrome, prediabetes, diabetes, the millions of people, tens of millions of people who are in that category, and then the multiple disease states that we have, the chronic disease that our children now have and we have, and the role of nutrition in all of this. And that'll be talking about nutrition from the Mediterranean diet to the paleo diet to ketogenic diets, and I'll actually even talk about the carnivore diet in this book. So
Oh, that's exciting. Now,
So I think that'll be a hugely important book.
oh, it'll be amazing. Now, if anyone's listening out there, they have MS, maybe like newly diagnosed, a family member. What would you suggest they do right now?
Well, the first thing to do is pick up my book, The Wahls Protocol. Read that. It'll shape your understanding of what is possible. And then I want you to have a big conversation with your family about how to improve your nutrition. And for some folks, we're ready to do a great big wholesale change. And you can, if you are, go for at least the paleo diet and the Wahls paleo diet. I also have other folks who are like, I just can't do a big wholesale change. I have to do things smaller, bit by bit. And then if you're in that group, talk with your family, the things to add, and the most important nutrition to add would be more omega-3 rich fats in the diet and more green leafy vegetables, cooked greens, big salads. Add more and more vegetables to crowd out the processed foods. If you're ready for wholesale, go gluten-free, dairy-free. You can either do it as a vegetarian, if that's spiritually important to you, or as a meat eater, which I think is better for you because it's complete protein. Then you do the Wahls paleo diet. And if you have metabolic issues, type 2 diabetes, severe obesity, belly bigger than your butt, metabolic syndrome.
Sorry, I've never heard that before. Belly bigger than your butt.
It's
oh my gosh,
people understand that. People understand that.
Yeah, I love.
I mean, and one of the things that Professor Bill Bean taught me is when you talk to your patients at the end of the appointment, ask them, what did you learn and what are you going to do? And what I learned was I was not a very good teacher. So I had to learn how to talk simply and with understandable metaphors. And so I have metaphors for farmers, for mechanics, for teachers. You want to have metaphors that people can understand. You want to have visuals that people can understand. So belly bigger than the butt, people get that.
Yes.
Sugar in the gas line for your car, people get that. A tornado comes through and wrecks your home here in Iowa, people get that. And they understand that it takes a lot of energy to clear out the debris and start over. And they can understand that if you have MS, there's been a lot of debris in your nervous system that you have to clear out and rebuild. And so your nutrition needs to be vastly better than someone who's healthy. And that's where having less trash, more nutrition, and probably also, I want people to take omega-3s. So some fish oil, vitamin D plus vitamin K, and a multivitamin, multimineral at the very least. That is key. And then we can talk about some additional supplements if you want to go there. But most people with MS, we have a profoundly deep nutritional hole from which we must dig ourselves out.
Yeah, absolutely. It's complex, but at the same time, it's reversible.
It's absolutely reversible.
Yeah. And, and you did it. And this is what I love about you. And I always enjoy talking with you. I loved when I met you. Are you going to A4M this year?
Yes, I am. I'm speaking. I think I have 2 speaks.
Oh, you're speaking. Okay.
Yeah.
I was on the fence about going, so maybe I'll have to go now. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Wahls, for being here. I'm so excited for you, for all your research, you being a grandmother and being able to, chase after your grandson. None of that would have been possible without your dedication and your passion for MS.
And I'm doing a lot more strength training now because
Good. Yeah.
I have to be sure that I can carry him. I'm doing vertical jumps, little sprints, because I have to feel sure I can chase after him. So super fun. I'm walking around carrying 60 pounds. I'm doing blood flow restriction bands as I work out. So
Yeah. Wow.
that strength workout is a big workout. I did that this morning. It's
Oh,
like,
that's
wow.
awesome.
Yep.
Well, you look fabulous.
Why,
So,
thank you.
yeah, thank you so much. I'm going to link everything, website, books below for you
Oh,
guys.
and be sure and link the trial. So you can
Oh, yes.
sign up. Yeah.
Yeah.
So everybody with MS, please sign up for a patient registry. So you'll be there so we can notify you in our next clinical trials. So, and people who don't have MS, we are also conducting other trials as well, fibromyalgia, long COVID. So we're looking for people with any chronic disease state to join our patient registry.
There you go. That's amazing. Well, thank you so much and have a great afternoon.
Thank you.